The kind of red-green alliance that we're talking about today, and the way the term is generally used now, we're talking about alliance between the radical left and Islamists. This is the marriage of convenience. The two sides that hate each other, but they hate each other just a little less than they hate Christianity, than they hate Judaism, and thus they're willing to align to destroy a common enemy before they turn on each other. See, both sides know that there's a coming war if they succeed in the destruction of the West as we know it, as it is based on Christianity. The left, the global left, Democrats in the United States, they're naive if they think they're going to eventually tame this tiger of Islam.
You know, I've spent my career taking on some of the cultural baddies, some of the most prominent intellectuals in the world, some of them in public debate, some of them behind the scenes. And I've come to realize that ideas define everything that we do. With an academic degree, you're trained to be a researcher and writer to the point that it's annoying. But I'm grateful for it. I'm not talking about books I've not read. I'm not talking about papers I've not read. Whether I agree with them or not actually isn't the point. There are quite a few books that I would read that I would say are actually evil books. Donald Trump, when he was in a divorce with his first wife, she said he has a copy of Mein Kampf next to his bed. I wish more people did. If the German people had bothered to read that book rather than just have it on their shelf, we might have avoided the Holocaust. If more people read the Quran, they'd be wiser to what Islam actually is, what they actually believe. If people bothered to read, as I have, the writings of Klaus Schwab and the various contributors to the World Economic Forum and the ideas that are driving the globalists, I read them because I want to understand their mentality. I cut out the middleman. I go straight to the ideology. Everything in your life is being defined by either your ideas or the ideas of the people around you. And each episode, we're going to be digging into a different idea that appears in the culture. This is Ideas Have Consequences with me, Larry Alex Taunton.
And we're discussing the so-called red-green alliance. Now, what does that mean? Well, the term initially meant a political alliance between the left, which is symbolized by red, meaning communism, and environmentalists, symbolized by, of course, green. But the term eventually came to mean just simply, a political marriage of convenience between two very different groups, ideologically different groups. So for an example of a red-green alliance that isn't one that is symbolized by its original meaning, environmentalist green, communist red, might be one, say, of old school Democrats who have migrated to the Trump camp, not because they're conservatives or even because they're Republicans, but because they're not communists, they're not fascists, they're not people who hate their own country. So they're willing to align with what they deem to be a lesser evil. And in that case, it would be Trump and MAGA and so forth. We've seen a lot of that lately. And I've been pointing this out to you for quite some time, that you need to be able to make a distinction between those people who are simply anti-woke, Elon Musk, for example, and those people who are actually conservative. There's a big difference between those two. And we've seen some real ideological migrations in recent years as the left has grown increasingly radical. But the kind of red-green alliance that we're talking about today, and the way the term is generally used now, we're talking about alliance between the radical left and Islamists. And in this case, the left is symbolized again by red, symbolizing communism, and the green means Islam, though there's no real great significance in the color green as we're applying it here. Again, it's just a term that is used right now to mean the political marriage of convenience between the radical left and Islamists. And they're very, very different in their views, but they do have a shared enemy, and we're going to get to that in just a moment. Now, we've seen this alliance in figures like Representative Ilhan Omar and the New York City mayoral candidate, Zohan Mamdani. We've also seen it with London's Sadiq Khan and so on. Many of Britain's mayors are, in fact, Muslims, and they often penetrate the West through socialism or through the Democrat Party in the United States, which, of course, is very socialist in its outlook. But why is that? Is that because Islam, at its heart, is really socialist? No, it's because Muslims know at this point, Islamists know and understand that their own belief system, it is a belief system of conquest, and it's important that you understand this. It doesn't mean that every Muslim that you meet believes that, but the ones who take the Quran, who take their holy literature, so-called, seriously, do understand this. Now, does that mean that they're all socialists? No, but they know that Islam, as yet, doesn't really sell in the West. So for Mamdani to run for mayor in New York, or Ilhan Omar, and the platform being, I'm very pro, Muslim, that doesn't sell particularly well. So what do? They come in as socialists. Now, to be my argument that Mamdani, and I could be wrong on this, but my own personal take, coming from my own encounters, both in the third world and in televised debates with Muslims, is that he's not actually a communist. That this is just simply a mask. This is simply a front that they are all using because they see that it is the best vehicle for penetrating the West for eventual Islamic conquest. And that's the reason that they've been willing to align themselves with the left. But also because they have a shared, enemy. But where I would like to look at the moment is not so much in U.S. politics, but let's look at British politics by way of explaining this and understanding this red-green alliance and the way that it works. And the reason we look there is because Britain, Europe in general, is much farther down the road in this, and we can kind of see by looking there where they want to go, what the roadmap is in the United States. Now, it's not going to be as easy in the United States, and that's simply because at this point anyway, Islamic migration into the United States, the numbers are much, much smaller than in Europe, where they have been importing them for decades now. I mean, we do have places like Dearborn, Michigan, Minneapolis, and other places, but generally speaking, those enclaves are few and far between when we compare it to what's taking place in Britain and in continental Europe. So for that reason, we look to Britain to get an idea, to get a glimpse into the future that they want here in the United States. When I say they, I mean both the Reds and the Greens as symbolized in this particular alliance that we're talking about here. Let's take a look first at a video recently put out by Prime Minister Keir Starmer's government, where he talks about Islam and protecting Islam. Let's watch this.
I'm so sorry that we're meeting in these circumstances, because that was a horrific attack that will have impacted every single member of the community. We've just been talking to some of the family members and getting a sense firsthand of the personal impact. I'm really pleased today that we are announcing a further £10 million to support our mosques on top of the support we've already put in. I'm pleased to say that. I'm sad to say it as well, in a sense, because I wish we didn't need to put in more security. We shouldn't need to have security in places of worship. And it's sad that we do, but that just reflects the responsibility on me, on the Home Secretary, to do everything we can to tackle hate crime.
Now that particular video is incredible, and you couple that with some of the governmental tweets where they're talking about the importance of protecting Muslim communities. He speaks of it there. We're giving another £10 million to the building of mosques and to the protection of our Muslim communities who are allegedly, according to his narrative, they're suffering at the hands of the British people. I mean, they are just being, abused right and left. Now, we know, of course, that this just doesn't meet with the facts. We know that we're not looking at, traditional British sex gangs that have targeted Muslim girls, adolescent girls, and are trafficking them by the tens of thousands all over Britain, indeed all over Europe. We know that's not happening. We know it's exactly the opposite. We've seen that with Rotherham. We did an episode where we discussed at length what happened in that particular case. And by the way, my book, which is not here on the table, on the desk here, my book, Around the World in More Than 80 Days, acquaints you with that. I have a chapter that's on a variety of countries, I think 26 countries in all, that I visited in the writing of that particular book. We actually visited more like 50 countries, but we only included, I think, 26 in the book. And the chapter on Britain discusses the Islamization of Britain in some detail, and you might go and take a look at that. But we also know that the crime rate in Britain, violent crime rate and theft, it has skyrocketed with the importation. And by the way, I want to stress that word. It is the importation. It's not just simply opening the borders. Same thing here under the Biden administration. Yes, the borders were open. And yes, in Britain and in the whole of Europe, they were just letting them flood in, coming across the Mediterranean and, loads of boats in the English Channel, but also the deliberate importation of them. I've done multiple episodes on my firsthand observation of how USAID was working hand in hand with the Del Golfo cartel in South America to facilitate the movement of illegals all the way to and through the U.S. border. But also, I've seen them being put on planes in places like Cartagena, Colombia, and flown to destinations unknown in the United States. So again, it isn't just simply a passive allowance of them coming in to our country and into Britain and to Europe. It was a willful, deliberate operation, human trafficking operation, to bring them into the country. And yet to sit and listen, I mean, it's disgusting actually to sit and listen to Keir Starmer, who makes it sound like this is a minority of people, and there's tens of millions of them now in the country, that have to be protected because they're so fragile. Because these are people who are being taken advantage of terribly. They're a persecuted people. They're the ones who are being treated violently and threatened and so on. And it's exactly the opposite, because the entire political mechanism, controlled chiefly by the left, has enabled the growth, the influence, the violence of Islamists in Britain and throughout Europe. And yet here he is. So you see right there on film, you see the alliance at work. And Muslims, by the way, I can tell you this firsthand, they're laughing behind their hands about this because they think guys like Starmer are fools. They're willing to make use of them. They're absolutely willing to utilize them, to capitalize on their stupidity because they have their own agenda. But hey, if you're going to let us in, you're going to use your tax dollars, the tax dollars of all these British people to assist us. You're going to kick the military out of their own housing and give it to us. We'll take it. You're going to give us money to the building of mosques. Saudi Arabia is already doing that in a big way, and they can easily afford it. The British taxpayer is grossly overburdened. But that doesn't matter because in Starmer's government, and he's just a puppet, of the globalist elites who meet at places like Davos and in the Swiss Alps, a place where I've been for the last few years and will be again, God willing, in January. This is the way they're operating. This is what the Red-Green Alliance looks like. At certain times, wise investors look for stability. Markets are overinflated, inflation remains a concern, and global tensions continue to rise. That's why many are turning to the safety of physical gold and silver. Alpha Omega Gold is a Christian-owned precious metals company known for honesty, transparency, and biblical stewardship principles. Their team help clients protect their investment with integrity and clear guidance, never pressure. Right now, Alpha Omega Gold is offering a free precious metals navigation guide to explain why owning gold and silver can be a smart, strategic hedge for retirement accounts and long-term security. Don't wait until economic shifts impact your future. So today, go and visit www.ao.gold/IHC or call 855-4AO-GOLD. That's 855-426-4653. Call today to learn how simple it can be to secure what matters most. Now, is it because guys like Starmer, is this happening because guys like Starmer really just don't understand Islam? Well, I would say the answer to that is yes and no. It's yes and no. Do they know? Do the radical leftist social engineers know that Islam is an ideology of conquest? Do they know that? Yes, they do know that. They're not stupid, and to this extent, they're very aware of that. They do know that. So the question becomes then, why do they enable it? Why do they enable it when they know, even if they're not admitting it out loud, when they know that roughly 250,000 British adolescent white girls, and I stress that because the British media, the Times, has pointed this out because they're specifically targeted by Islam. Is it that they don't know these things are happening? No, they know very well. The Times of London broke the Rotherham case in 2012. There's been a fair amount of media coverage on that issue in that country, if not in this one. Most people here have no idea what you're talking about when you refer to Rotherham. It is probably the greatest political scandal outside of the 2020 election and January 6th of modern times. It's absolutely extraordinary how that particular story has been suppressed and how almost no one has been punished for it. So does Starmer's government, his predecessors, did they just not know this? No, of course they know it. Do they not know about the rise in crime? Yes, of course they know it. Do they not know about the knifings? Do they not know about the beheadings? Do they not know about the church burnings? Are these things they really just don't know about? No, they know all of it. They know all of it, and they're happy to enable it. But the question becomes, why? And this is a question I get a lot. I mean, Larry, why in the world would the Biden administration, by way of example, or leftist politicians throughout the Western world, why would they enable this? Why would they want to do this? Why would they want to soil the nest in which they live? Surely they have to see this. They do see it, and they do know it. But they're willing to do it. And by the way, they've been doing this really since the Romantic period. They have been, I would say, on the heels of the Reformation, in the so-called Enlightenment. European intellectuals wanted to celebrate Islam over and above Christianity. They wanted to speak of its sophistication. They wanted to speak of its elegance. They wanted to speak of its beauty. They wanted to speak of its wonderful people, knowing, in fact, that what they were saying, by and large, was a lie. But their hatred of Christianity was such that they were willing to do it. And they were willing to use it as a cudgel against the West. And that's because radical leftists hate the West. They hate Western values, which, of course, are built on a Judeo-Christian worldview. And again, those of you who go into the comments and say, stop saying Judeo-Christian. There's no such thing as Judeo-Christian. Yes, there is. There's not a religion by that name. But when we say Judeo-Christian, we simply mean the shared holy texts of both Judaism and Christianity. In this case, that's the Old Testament. And specifically, it's a reference to the Decalogue, to the Ten Commandments. The West grew out of a worldview that is predicated on the Ten Commandments. Both Christians and Jews hold them as sacred and holy. And it gave rise to the West as we know it. And leftists hate it. They hate all of it. And they want to destroy it. And guess who else wants to as well? Muslims. So this is the marriage of convenience. This is what we mean by the red-green alliance. The two sides that hate each other, but they hate each other just a little less than they hate Christianity, than they hate Judaism, and thus they're willing to align to destroy a common enemy before they turn on each other. See, both sides know that there's a coming war if they succeed in the destruction of the West as we know it, as it is based on Christianity. Even, by the way, people who aren't Christians, I'm not suggesting that everyone in the West is a Christian. Data shows certainly that's not the case. But even people in the West who are born and raised in the West, who are atheists, they nonetheless have inhaled deeply of that Judeo-Christian ethos. And as a result, they're heavily influenced by it. And that's why the West has been very different from countries like, say, China, North Korea. And that is due to enormous Christian influence in the West. Both Islam and radical leftists want to destroy it, and that's because they hate it. And they understand, by the way, better than most Westerners do, that Christianity is really the bedrock of that. The left understood that with guys like Karl Marx. That's why Karl Marx, I think I have one of his books up here. This is a biography of Marx, but I would encourage you to go and read. I don't have it up here, but I would encourage you to go and read the Communist Manifesto. The Communist Manifesto is about as thick as my phone. It's not long. It's, I don't know, going off the top of my head, maybe it's 90 pages, 125 pages, not long. And it's very readable. And that's because Marx was good at writing punchy articles and essays. Big, thick books, less so. But essays, he was very good at that. And by good, I don't mean in the moral sense. It is a vile screed, but is readable. And it will give you insight into the thinking of the left. And what are the pillars of Western society that he wants to destroy, chiefly? You're going, well, capitalism. Yes, but capitalism actually isn't his main target. It's the Christian faith. He wants to destroy that pillar, and he wants to destroy the family. Indeed, he says, and I quote, abolish the family. Guys like Antonio Gramsci writing in his secret notebooks in an Italian prison in the 1930s, he was the guy who came up with the idea, or we kind of credit him with it. There's really no absolute beginning for this, but the long march through the institutions, that you infiltrate the institutions and you destroy them from within. We've seen that happening not just in government. We've seen it in cinema. We've seen it in families. We've seen it in churches. So that's what we're talking about when we mean that. But a desire to destroy the Christian faith. Why? Because they understand that it is the bedrock upon which the West is built. And Islam wants to destroy it for very obvious reasons. And that is because they're commanded in their own holy literature that there is to be nothing left in the world that is not for Allah. All must be for Allah, and therefore you must terrorize unbelievers until they convert. And when you conquer a land, you give the conquered three choices: convert, pay a tax, or die. Now, I was recently in Egypt, as some of you will know. I say recently; it's been a few months now. since I was there, and that was when I had the big run-in with the Egyptian secret police. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, it took place outside of the USAID headquarters, and you can go back and look at the videos, dealing with that resulted in possibly in my a swatting. Yeah, that would probably be in a February or March episodes of Ideas Have Consequences, but somewhere in there, talking about that. But I've yet to talk about the real reason I was there. USAID was one of the reasons I was there, but it wasn't the only reason that I was there. I was there to do research on and engagement with, and indeed we will eventually show this to you, of the Zabaleen. The Zabaleen are Coptic Christians. A Coptic simply means Egyptian. It's a reference to what Egypt was once called, and the Christians who dwelt there well before the Muslim conquest of that country. But since the Islamization of that country, in modern day Egypt isn't an Islamic state, it is a Muslim majority of country. And there's some difference between that, say, in Iran, which is an Islamic state. But nonetheless, Islam is observed there, and you have the call to prayer, and Islamic law reigns there. The Zabaleen are forced to live on the periphery of society there. They're not allowed to integrate into society because they're not Muslims. And now, if they convert, they would be allowed to integrate, but they don't, and they're incredibly brave people. But again, this is Islam. When you conquer a country, people are forced to convert, pay a tax, or die. And of course, most of the Zabaleen couldn't pay the tax, and they wouldn't convert, and therefore they were beheaded. And others just put to the kick to the curb. But Zabaleen means the garbage people, and that's because the only thing they're really allowed to do is collect garbage, and they've managed to turn it into an economy that sustains them. They're remarkable people. And for those of you who think you're oppressed, you think you're a victim, there are real victims in this world. My daughter Sasha, whom we adopted from Ukraine, she suffered as much or more than any human being I know, and she doesn't think of herself as a victim, and she doesn't want to look back. She moves forward. You'll see her in an interview that I did with her about the movie. What's it called? Cry of Freedom. What's the name of that movie? The film that came out a couple of years ago about child trafficking in South America, which was a real, based on a real story, and it features Jim Caviezel. But anyway, the Red-Green Alliance, why does the left enable Islam? Well, to attack Christianity, because they see it as a battering ram that they can use to destroy Western values. But what are they going to do should they succeed? They will have imported millions of Muslims into Europe, into Britain, and they're reproducing like rabbits. What will they do then? Well, they're pretty confident that they will be the last man standing, the last ideology standing, because they're pretty confident that they will destroy Islam and build their secular utopia upon the rubble with the state as the object of worship. But again, another question arises. Why would they think that they can control the millions of Muslims who have already colonized Britain and Europe? Well, they think they can because of technology. The left has always worshipped technology. They worship it. It never seems to dawn on anyone with things like, let's say, AI, to say, you know what, maybe because we can do it, that doesn't mean we should do it. No wisdom seems to be attached with any of this. They love technology. They worship technology. And they're confident that with technology, they will be able to control everyone, Muslims no less than anyone else. Let's watch Keir Starmer again in this brief little discussion here that he puts forward as propaganda promoting digital IDs.
So I'm in Brighton today. This is Barclays Bank, and I've been talking to customers about digital ID, and they're really enthusiastic. It'll have your basic information on it. For everything other than proving you've got a right to work, it won't be mandatory. You don't have to have it, but you can have it. You can use it for anything that requires identification, and there are lots of things. If you want to rent, for example, if you want to apply for a mortgage, if you want to get your child into primary school, there's a catchment area, and you've got to show where you live, proving who you are, what your date of birth is, will just be able to be done with digital ID. They're really up for it, and I think once you understand just how much easier it'll make life, so many more people will be too.
Okay, so there you have it. He gives you the impression he's gone out and he's kind of taken his own straw poll of people, and everybody he talks to just says, it's great. I can't wait to be digitized. I can't wait to be chipped. This is going to be so wonderful. And here's a tweet that the Labour Party, and it is the Labour Party that is pushing digital IDs. This is not going to a referendum. It's not going to the House of Commons. It's not going to the House of Lords. It is being presented to the British people in fiat. This is coming. You can't stop it. We're going to make you do it. But here is a Labour Party tweet. Take a look at this. We put it up on the screen here. Digital ID will make your life easier. And it shows on the left side, without ID, we see, your passport and presumably your electric bill, your power bill or something, concert tickets, a pile of letters. And then on the other side, we just see a cell phone. So without digital ID, you've got all of this paperwork that you have to deal with. You have to carry around with you. And with it, you just have your phone, which you're going to have with you anyway. So isn't this wonderful? We are cutting through red tape for you. It's for you. It's not about us. It's not about control. Did you know that London is already the most surveilled city outside of China? Anywhere in the world, the most surveilled city outside of China. It's absolutely incredible, the level of surveillance in that city if you're there. And this is the whole thing that got my dear friend Lawrence Fox in trouble, because Lawrence had tweeted his support for, or at least not his opposition to, these so-called Blade Runners, who are going out with handsaws and we're cutting down the ULEZ cameras, which, again, this was sold to the British people as convenience, as for your safety. And the robbing of freedoms are always sold this way. Dostoevsky, in the Brothers Karamazov, in a chapter called The Grand Inquisitor, you have there where it says the people, will bow down to us, meaning the elitists, and they will surrender their freedoms to us and say, take our freedom, but feed us. Take our freedom, but feed us. It's always sold that way. And that's the way it was with the ULEZ cameras, which stands for, what does that mean? Ultra low emissions zone. Ultra low emissions zone. So supposedly it was for the environment. And it takes a photograph of your license plate, and your bank account gets debited every time you go into the city, every time in your car. And I don't remember how much it was, 12 pounds, 15 pounds, something like that. Somebody who's watching the show from Britain perhaps can give us that. But the point here is that it was sold to the British people in this way. But really what it was all about money, an additional tax, a stealth tax, and also surveillance. It was just making the surveillance state that much bigger. And now here comes Keir Starmer telling everyone, this is really for you. It's for your safety. It's for your convenience. No, ladies and gentlemen, they couldn't care less about your safety. If they did, they'd put an end to the massive, human trafficking of these girls, and they haven't. If they cared, they would punish the thousands of men, mostly Pakistanis, who are responsible for this, but they haven't. If they really cared, they would not have opened the borders and facilitated the importation of an alien ideology. But they haven't. If they really cared, they would stop the knife attacks. But they haven't. If they really cared, they would allow the British people to arm themselves, to defend themselves. But they haven't. Do not believe a lying government when that government says that they care for you, and every action they take tells you they don't. Actions do speak louder than words. I know who you are by what you do, not simply by what you pay lip service to. And you have to pay attention because that's what this is about. It's about control. And you see, from the perspective of the left, because they worship technology, they're confident that this is just a thin end of the technological surveillance state wedge. This is incrementalism. At this point, they say, this is all you'll need. It's not going to cost you anything. It's going to be so easy. Next thing you know, they're going to be putting a chip in your brain. I mean, that's where this kind of stuff is headed. And I laugh here not because it's funny. I laugh because it's so horrifying and so unbelievable that is all you can do. Unless you're going to get out and oppose this stuff. And it's the kind of thing that we actually have to do. But to begin with, the digital IDs, the target is traditional white British people. That is the target for the short term. If you think they're doing this in order to slow down human trafficking or to slow down this mass migration, you're deadly wrong. They're not going to use it in that way at all. If you think they're going to use it to prevent knife attacks, they're not. But the long-term strategy is to eventually use it to control Muslims themselves. And so digital ID is in part a preemptive move, chess move, in what they know is going to be the red-green war. There is a coming red-green war should they succeed in the annihilation of Christianity throughout Europe and Britain. That the two will then turn on each other. And by the way, this is something the communists, refer to as United Front. Stalin did this. He was a diabolical genius when it came to this. It's a little bit like an Agatha Christie novel, and then there were none. He would align with 9 against the 1. Then he would align with the 8 against the 1 and the 7 against the 1 until he was the last man standing. That's what he did. He aligned with the majority and turned them against his most powerful enemy, destroyed him, and then repeated the process again and again. That's what's happening here. And both the radical left and Islamists, they do understand that a clash is coming between the two of them. The marriage of convenience is not meant to be one forever. Both of them hate each other. It's just that they hate Christianity even more. They hate the West even more, and they especially hate the United States. They both see the United States as the great Satan, even though the left doesn't use that kind of terminology, but it is, in effect, what they what they more or less believe. But I would suggest to you that the left, the global left, Democrats in the United States, that they're naive if they think they're going to eventually tame this tiger of Islam. They're very naive. They think they'll be able to do it because of technology. But the coming war, let's think about this for just a second. First of all, it's a failure to understand history. All the bunker busters and drones in the world could not bring ultimate victory in Afghanistan. We saw the images, of Biden withdrawing the U.S. military from Afghanistan. We saw the guy, clinging to the plane and, falling thousands of feet to the ground. It was the United States leaving. It was Western armies leaving with their tail between their legs. Didn't bring ultimate victory there. And it won't bring it here. And that's also because, I told you that Is it guys like Starmer? The radical left, do they really not understand Britain? I said the answer to that is yes and no. They do understand that it's an ideology of conquest. That's the yes part. The no part is that they can't understand an absolutist ideology like Islam. And it's really more of an ideology than a religion. There's not to say that there's not some religious aspect to it. Certainly there is. Secularists, are religious in a sense. Pagan, really, in many ways. When we see that ideology playing out, it becomes increasingly pagan, not increasingly irreligious. But that's a whole separate conversation. The reason they don't understand it is because, from a secular point of view, this life is all you get. There's no hereafter. And as such, there's almost nothing worth dying for. Almost nothing worth dying for. Now, that is not what Muslims, or Christians for that matter, believe. Muslims believe, like Christians, they believe in eternity. And they believe that life is a test that determines where you will live in the next life. Secularists don't believe that, and they can't get into the heads of Muslims. By the way, this is what they didn't understand about 9/11. The leftist narrative after 9/11, some of them doing it disingenuously, but many of them, I think, genuinely believing this line, is they're going, these people are crazy. I mean, they're absolutely crazy. Who would fly a plane into the side of a building, killing themselves and hundreds of people? What's the point of that? Well, from a secular point of view, there's none. Because again, this life is all you get. But from a Muslim point of view, it's a perfectly rational, and yes, that's the word I used, rational decision given their worldview. If you believed, consider for a moment, if you believed that your own eternal salvation could be secured, possibly that of members of your family, by dying as a martyr, by killing infidels, would you be willing to do it? Would you at least contemplate it? I think you would, if you believed it. If you believed, as a man, that Allah will reward you not just with eternal life, but with 70 beautiful virgins to fulfill your every whim, would you do it? The answer to that is obviously yes, because many of them do it. But you see, from a secular point of view, because they don't believe in eternity, they don't believe that there's a God to judge in the next life your actions in this one, dying for a cause seems not to be really worth it in most instances. It just isn't worth it. Maybe dying for your family would be, but that'd be about it. That would be about it. But you see, Muslims do believe this. And the result of that is that an absolutist ideology like that is very, very difficult to defeat. Is very difficult to defeat. The coming red-green war is going to be analog versus digital. Analog, the old, backward way of doing things, versus the very sophisticated modern way of doing things, and analog is going to win. Analog is going to win. Indeed, just as the left is as confident as they are in their coming inevitable victory over Islamists after the defeat of the Christian West, Islamists are equally certain that they can take Europe's capitals anytime they want, and they're right. They are right. Consider this. Muslims regularly, we'll put some images up for you to see this. Muslims regularly pour into the streets of Europe by the millions for protests. It's happened in London. It's happened in all the major European capitals. Now, what's going on with that? Is it because Muslims are really big on demonstrations? Not so much, because they don't believe in democracy. These are dry runs. They're dress rehearsals for the time when they will pour out in the street I'm just making a prediction here, and I could be wrong. I'm just telling you what I think is coming because it seems to me quite obvious. And you can remember that I told you this when it does happen, though I would love for you to be able to tell me 25 years from now, hey, you made that prediction and it never happened. I think this is a rehearsal for the time when they pour out into the streets, supposedly for a demonstration, but in reality, to seize the levers of power. What will happen with all the surveillance technology that London has when Islamists pour out into the streets and their leaders say to them, take Parliament, take the police stations, take the army bases, storm 10 Downing Street? I think these things are coming. I think they're coming, and I think they know that it will be an unstoppable force. And that is because the people who will be in the front of those lines, they might get mowed down, but those are, again, Islam is an absolutist ideology that believes in martyrdom, and through martyrdom, one finds eternal bliss and salvation. And so if you're mowed down in that cause, dying for Allah, so much the better. And there are not going to be enough bullets to stop them. Every time I see these crowds out in the streets by the tens of thousands, yea, even hundreds of thousands and millions, I'm thinking, my, what extraordinary power. One of these days, their leaders going to shout, Allahu Akbar, and tell them that today, this country, Britain or Germany or what have you, becomes a caliphate. Today, it becomes a Muslim nation. Today, it becomes our latest victory in the name of Allah. Digital versus analog. Technology versus brute force, and brute force will win out. The left is confident that they will win out because of their technological superiority, because they worship that kind of power. They do. But I don't think that is going to be the case. So this is the Red-Green Alliance. This is what we mean when we talk these days about the Red-Green Alliance. The red, the so-called communists, though many of them are actually fascists, who are on the left, and both of those are ideologies of the left. They're twin bastard ideologies of the same socialist father. Marxism, communism, and fascism, symbolized by the red. And over on the other side, we have the Islamists, who are symbolized by the green. And these two will continue to work together in taking New York or Dearborn, Michigan, or London, or Oslo, or Paris, or Berlin, you name the city. They'll continue to work together. They will continue to look the other way as the rights, the privileges, yea, even the right to defend themselves is taken from not just Christians, by the way, but those of a Christian mentality. My father, not until his deathbed did he become a Christian, but my father absolutely was of a very Christian mindset and outlook. His moral framework, as he understood it, was informed by a Christian worldview. These are the kind of people they want to destroy. They are the people they want to destroy, and then they're going to turn their attention on each other. And it's one of the things that I can even feel sorry for so many of the alphabet mafia who are out there, with their signs and T-shirts and things that say lesbians or homosexuals for Palestine. They have no idea you are going to be the first people they put against the wall. They hate you. They hate you. They hate your lifestyle. They hate what you represent. They hate everything about you, but they hate Christians and Jews more, and they want to kill them first. That's what the Red-Green Alliance is attempting to bring into the West. Now, we know that Donald Trump, I'm hoping that his advisors closest enough to him, I certainly think J.D. Vance understands this, very well. But it's one of the reasons he's closed our borders and why ICE is engaging in the activities they're engaging in to deport so many of these people of a radical ideology. It's why he's sending military into some of our cities, because Red Green Alliance is taking in some of these places. In some cases, like Portland, is just red. It's just red. Chicago, just red parts. And I don't mean red in the sense of red state, blue state. I mean red in the sense of communist or fascist. And he's seeking to restore order. He's seeking to restore safety. He's seeking to restore a rule of law. But he understands very well and stands opposed to allowing the Red-Green Alliance to achieve such a foothold in our country as it has in Britain and in continental Europe. Now, what's going to happen in New York? I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball here, on the table to give me clues into where that's going. But it is really critical that you understand this. And I just want to end today's episode with this thought. People have said to me, Larry, because I've tweeted things like Islam should be banned in the United States. People say, yeah, but that's contrary to the Constitution. There's supposed to be freedom of religion. No. Freedom of religion cannot constitutionally be permitted if that religion is contrary to the Constitution. It would be like saying, well, there's this group of people and they believe in child sacrifice. You really can't stop them from doing that because it's their religion. And therefore, we allow it. We look the other way. No, that's contrary to a rule of law. It's contrary to the laws of our land. It's contrary to our Constitution. It's contrary to who we are as a people. And Islam, anyone who is a Muslim, a serious Muslim, I don't mean fuzzy Western Muslims, people who are just Muslims, what I call cultural Muslims. They never really read the Hadith or the Quran, don't want to. They don't really know anything about the life of Muhammad. They were born into a Muslim family and into a Muslim culture, and they adhere to that in some vague sense. But they watch the same TV shows and movies as you do and like some of the same music, and they more or less hold a Western, really a Christian worldview. Those are not the people I'm talking about. I'm talking about the ones that we refer to as radical Muslims, who are, in fact, not radicals at all. They're Orthodox Muslims. They're the ones who take it seriously. They're the ones who believe it. They're the ones who believe the Quran, who believe the Hadith, who believe that they're to model their lives after Muhammad. Those people, their worldview is, by definition, misogynistic, anti-Semitic, anti-freedom, conquest, pro every kind of evil that you can think of. Those are all things that are contrary to our Constitution. They cannot be allowed, and therefore Islam is a religion that is non-constitutional. It's anti-constitutional. And it can't be allowed into the United States. That, at least, is my own particular view, and I'm hoping the President of the United States will give that some very serious thought. Senator Tommy Tuberville has been saying this. In a roundabout way, he's been saying that we should ban Sharia, which means law. We often say Sharia law, which is actually, unnecessary. It's like saying law. But anyway, Sharia, he's saying we should ban it because there's efforts to bring it in to the United States, as there has been all over Europe. And he's absolutely right. But I would just say we need to go back one more space on the chessboard, and that is to Islam itself. It must be banned in the United States. Cannot be allowed into the United States. And as for the left, as for the red, many of the views that they hold, many of the things that they're pushing, they're equally unconstitutional. And those are things like Marxism. I mean, Marxism is an ideology that's every bit as evil, if not more so, than Islam. And that's because Marxist regimes, secular regimes, killed no less than 150 million people in the previous century alone. That's more than all religious wars from all previous centuries combined. Neither American. We cannot allow them. This has been another episode of Ideas Have Consequences with me, Larry Alex Taunton.